looking at an issue that was happening during Adams' presidency, and it dealt with the tariff. We know a tariff is something that is placed on foreign goods, right? Right? We know a tariff is something that is placed on foreign goods so that people could buy what? American goods. And we see that the tariff of 1816, y'all saw this on your study guide before, was established as the first protective tariff in American history, right? Which area of America was it really protecting? The North, right? Why was it? This was a protective tariff to protect our northern manufacturers, right? So it protects northern manufacturers. Right? Does everybody like that? No, because what happens to the cost of goods? It goes up. And so we're going to see in 1816 that tariff was 20%. Then in Adams' administration, we know Adams is a guy from the north, the tariff goes up. Is the South and the West going to be happy with this? So let me just look. I'm going to divide up in America, right? This is my America. This is the North. This is the South. This is the West. Who really likes the tariff? The North loves the tariff, right? Does the South and the West like the tariff? No, they have very angry faces, right? Both areas very angry with this tariff because what happens to price? They hate it because price increases. And that hits their pocketbooks. So are we having sectionalism here? With each side having a different feeling on this tariff. And so, the tariff of abominations is a tariff done during the Adams administration. Okay, so looking at this tariff of abominations is really this 1828 tariff. Look at that tariff. How much does tariffs go up? A lot, 45%. So now it is cheaper to buy American goods, right? And it's very expensive to buy foreign goods, okay? But Congress is going to pass this higher tariff on manufactured goods. But once one on raw materials was needed to make manufactured goods, Jackson supporters try to hurt Adams. They are the ones who are supporting this. Does Jackson supporters who are from the West and the South really like high tariffs? No, they want to make Adams look bad because we know Adams is from what area? The North. And if Adams said that he liked this tariff, that would completely ostracize him from the West and the South, and would the West and the South vote for them? So this was Jackson supporters trying to hurt Adams. They were just pushing this tariff out there. They felt that it would never pass. But it backfired. It does pass. Are they upset now? Yes, because now they're going to have to live with this. The whole purpose was just to make Adams look bad. And now it backfired. It passed. Now the Southerners really hated this, and they're going to have to push for state rights. I guess they hate this because the price will go up. And so I'm going to explain what the problem with tariff is, and I have it all written out here for you. So we're seeing while the economies of the Northeast, which deals with what? What do they deal with? Manufacturing. And the West, they're going to deal with farming, specifically like corn and wheat. And the Southwest expanded. The Old South, which they're going to be concentrated on cotton, began to decline. The soil in the older southern states had worn out. Basically, this is called soil butchery. That, y'all know, farmers, can they replant in the same area over and over and over again? No, they're supposed to let the land what? Rest. A lot of times they plant sunflowers on that land. Do y'all ever see that in April, that the sunflowers are coming out? And a sunflower is actually one of those rejuvenating crops that they plant on their soil to give it life again. So in the Old South, they're having soil butchery, which meant they could not compete on equal terms with the new Gulf states. We're talking about Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Southerners believe, not illogically, that this Yankee tariff, remember that tariff's up to 45%, discriminated against them. They sold their and other farm produce in a world market completely unprotected by tariffs. So, what happens to price if you're not protected by tariffs? Is price high or price low? There's no tariffs. Prices are low. So they have low prices, right? So they're completely unprotected by tariffs, and we're forced to buy their manufactured goods in an American market heavily protected by tariffs. So tariff, what happens to the price? Prices go what? Prices go up. So let me explain this whole thing that the prices are higher. So the plight of a Southerner may be illustrated in a hypothetical case. Suppose that in 1828, an English manufacturer sold shoes in South Carolina $1.25 a pair, whereas in Massachusetts, a shoemaker paying higher wages would have to charge $1.50 for a pair of equal quality. The South Carolinians would naturally buy British footwear. Okay? So looking at this, who are the South Carolinians buying footwear from? The British, because it is cheaper. Find her another period. I'm recording. If a tariff of 50 cents were put and levied on foreign shoes at Charleston Custom House, the British shoes would now cost $1.75 a pair. So are they now more expensive? So the Massachusetts shoemaker is going to get people to buy his shoes. But what they would do is they would bring up their price to anything less than $1.75, say $1.74. So let's look at this. Originally, people were buying the British shoes because they were $1.25, right? And then the Massachusetts shoe was $1.50, right? So people were buying the British shoe. But now, if a tax is put on this shoe, it's now going to be $1.75. So what shoe are they going to buy? The one for $1.50. But what is that Massachusetts shoemaker going to do with that price? It's going to raise it up to $1.74. So how much has price gone up? A whole 49 cents. And I know that looks like nothing today, but back then was that a lot? So basically, the Massachusetts shoemaker, he says people are going to buy me no matter what because I'm less than $1.75. Let me raise my price to $1.74. Is this getting that Southerner upset? Because what is happening to the price because of a tariff? It is going up. So what we're seeing is that they still undercut the British competitor by selling the cheapest shoes in South Carolina. The South Carolinians were thus forced to pay higher prices, right? This is why they dislike the tariff, while the profits of the Yankee manufacturer consumerly fattened. This artificial inflation is the most objectionable thing that has been the feature of higher tariffs. So do you now understand why the South is upset with this? What is happening to prices? They're going up. Did that Massachusetts shoemaker need to raise the price? No, but he realized, could he gain some profit? So what is going to happen is the South is also going to get a double whammy here. Because now they're going to buy shoes from who? Massachusetts. This is going to have another effect. The South also objected the consequences of towering tariffs. Higher prices generally led to the reduced volume of purchase in both direct ways. So for example, hey, here's South Carolina. Now they're forced to buy whose shoe? Massachusetts. Who were they originally buying shoes from? Britain was sending a boat over here, right? With manufactured goods. And they would bring manufactured goods. The Southerners would buy them because they were what? Cheaper. Now, they would take their boat back and they would have cotton on it. Now, if they're not bringing shoes over, what are they not taking back to Europe? Cotton. So, higher prices generally led to a reduced volume of purchases in both directions. If Americans bought fewer English textiles as manufactured goods, the British in turn would buy less Southern cotton. Do you now understand why they're upset? Prices are going up, but what is happening to what they're selling because they're no longer buying British? It's declining. This is a double whammy tariff. So, gonna pass. It passes under the Adams administration. Does he win the election in 1828? No, now Jackson comes in, and he now has to force this tariff through. So the people are not gonna like it. John C. Calhoun is Jackson's vice president. And John C. Calhoun is also from South Carolina. Does South Carolina like this tariff? He is gonna write, and you're gonna see this, he's gonna write an unsigned essay, and you will see this on your test, called South Carolina Exposition and Protest. Calhoun argued that each state was sovereign. So he's making an argument for whose rights? The federal government's or states' rights? He's making an argument for states' rights. He says the states had been sovereign under the Articles of Confederation, and they had not given up their supreme authority when they joined the new union. Since the union had been created by the states and not vice versa, doesn't this bring back that compact theory that we saw Jefferson and Madison write, right? This is bringing up that compact theory. And this is also bringing up the theory of what? It's an N word. Bringing up the theory of nullification. Okay? Say it. Okay? So he said, since the union had been created by the states and not vice versa, it followed that the creator was more powerful than the creature. As the national government was not supreme, it could only exercise those powers given it to by the states as embodied by the Constitution. Calhoun therefore argued the state had the right to cancel a national law it considered to be unconstitutional. This idea in declaring a law unconstitutional is nullification. So essentially, Jackson's vice president is writing the South Carolina Exposition saying that South Carolina does not have to listen to who? The federal government. And what don't they have to pay? The tariff, right? They said, we don't have to pay the tariff. We don't like the tariff. We could nullify the tariff. Whoa, do you think Jackson's going to have issues? Does Jackson even like the tariff? No, but he's now president. Does he have to enforce it? So, we're going to see by mid-1832, South Carolina extremists were ready to put the theory of nullification into practice. They vigorously denounced the tariff of 1832. I want you to look at this tariff. I know I flipped over. It brought down it to 35%. Is it still high? Yes. Yes, so they're buying less British goods, right? So that means the British are buying less what from the South? Cotton. So we're going to see they still protest. They still protest this mid-32 tariff as unconstitutional and oppressive. We know it's oppressive because the British are not buying their stuff. They're being forced to pay higher prices. In the fall of 1832, the South Carolina legislature called for a state convention to consider the tariff issue. The convention met November 24th, 1832, and by a vote of 36 to 26, they adopted an ordinance of nullification, declaring the tariffs of 30, 32, and 28 null and void. So are they going to pay them? No. And in February 1st, 1833, the tariff duties were not to be collected in South Carolina. We're going to see, should the federal government forcefully attempt to collect them, they would secede. Whoa, this is a whole 30 years before the Civil War. And South Carolina is already saying, we're going to get out, right? But do y'all see how things from the 10s, like that tariff of 1816, do you see how it's slowly making an issue that is going to lead to the Civil War? The idea in South Carolina, when the Civil War happened, South Carolina is the first one to leave when the Civil War happens. Have they been planning this?
Yes.
Yes. Do we know that it's other issues that is causing the Civil War, such as the tariffs? Right here, even before slavery was an issue, tariffs were an issue. So Jackson, we know Jackson, does he like the tariff? No, but he is president, and is he going to have to enforce it?
Yes.
So when he hears that Calhoun, his vice president, has written this, do you think Calhoun's going to remain his vice president? No. Calhoun will resign, and he'll get a new vice president, Martin Van Buren. So Jackson first he realizes, okay, I can't go in there with guns blazing, right? Because if I go in there with guns blazing, what are we going to have? A war. So on December 10th, 1832, Jackson will issue the proclamation to the people of South Carolina. He is going to reject the theory of nullification. So he basically saying states have rights or not have rights? They have no rights. Wait, is that what he believes in? No, he is a Democratic Republican who believes in what? Is he flipping on his beliefs? Yes, because he is now president. He says, I consider the power to annul a law of the United States assumed by one state incompatible with the existence of the Union, contradicted expressly by the Constitution, unauthorized by its spirits, inconsistent with every principle on which it was founded, and destructive to the great objective for which it was formed. So, does he believe that the state has the right to nullify? He is against what? Nullification in states' rights. And we know he's flipping on his beliefs. Do you think this is going to work? No. So then we're going to see that Clay is going to come in and help Jackson. Clay is going to come in and do the carrot. And I know this sounds really weird, but I always think about it, how do you attract a bunny back to you? You show him food, right? When the bunny goes away, you hit him with a stick, right? Don't do that again. Look, just pay attention with me. I don't call Pete on me. Okay. Clay is going to do the compromise tariff of 1832. This new proposed tariff by Henry Clay will reduce duties over the next 10 years and will get it to a more uniform rate of 20%. So what does this reduce? The cost, right? And now do those British goods become a little bit cheaper? Yes. Do American goods become cheaper? Yes, because we're reducing it, right? So if British goods become cheaper, will the British come and buy American cotton? Yes, so is this done to appease the South? The next thing, this is Jackson and the Force Bill. He says the Force Bill authorized the President of the United States to send a Navy to enforce the laws. Jackson expected to send 15,000 men to Charleston within the next 2 weeks and 200,000 by the next 40 days. Okay, is this beating them up? Yeah. They're trying to attract him with the carrot, right? And then he says, will you ever be able to do this again? No. And so we will see that they will agree to this compromise tariff. So Jackson will sign both bills March 2nd, 1833. Once the compromise tariff was passed, South Carolina repealed its ordinance of nullification. However, in a last gesture of defiance, the convention declared the Force Bill null and void. So what couldn't the president do? Send in a what? Military. They agreed to the tariff, but they do not want Jackson's military in here. Jackson, in a saving grace, just ignored the gesture and just said, okay, the crisis is over. But do you think the idea of nullification is dead? No. So, the long term. Both sides claimed victory. The Nationalists held that the power of the national government had been upheld by both the President and Congress. In contrast, South Carolina asserted, this is a big thing, South Carolina asserted that nullification had proven an effective method for sustaining states' rights. So are they going to come back to this idea of nullifying when they don't like a federal law? Yes. This will lead us to the Civil War. And eventually after the Civil War, when the South does not like a federal law that asks them to desegregate, they're going to nullify. We're going to see, however, the failure of any other southern states to rally towards South Carolina's defense showed that the doctrine of nullification was unpopular. And from that time forward, militant Southerners looked to the doctrine of secession. That's a key thing. Many Southerners looked to the doctrine of secession as their best redress against grievances. Okay, looking at this, does the Civil War stem from the 1930s? Yes, because this is where they get all their arguments. So we cannot look at just 1860 and the couple of years before the Civil War starts as the word coming there. We could look back from the era of good feelings, back from the 1810s all the way to the 1820s and 1830s. Again, we're going to see that this idea of nullification that Jefferson came up with in the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, that South Carolina uses in this tariff issue, is going to set the foundation for the Civil War. It is interesting to note that on his deathbed, Jackson expressed regret that he had not executed Calhoun for treason. He says, "My country," he said, "would have sustained me in the act, and his fate would have been a warning to traitors in all time to come." Okay, looking at this, can y'all now see how nullification is going to lead us to the Civil War? Can you see how states' rights is going to lead us to the Civil War? And these are the big things that no one gives consideration to as causing the Civil War.